The Blue Jackets kept us busy over the weekend with news pouring in from Columbus. Kirill Marchenko has signed a 3-year deal to remain with the Blue Jackets, AAV of $3.8 million. Led the team with 23 goals last season and set a career high with that and his 42 points. Meanwhile, Kent Johnson also inked a new deal with Columbus, 3 years as well. AAV just south of $2 million as the 5th overall pick in 2021. Ended up splitting time between the AHL and the NHL with the Blue Jackets last year. Finally, we learned that Patrik Laine has been cleared from the NHLPA Player Assistance Program, but that does not necessarily mean his future is set with the Blue Jackets. And for more on that, we bring in Blue Jackets insider and the guy who keeps a pulse on everything happening in Columbus. Let's be real. Aaron Portzline taking time out of his vacation to join us right now. As you said, too, the Blue Jackets kept you busy over the weekend. Let's start with the Laine news, though, because, I kind of alluded to this. Just because he's out of the program doesn't necessarily mean he will stay in Columbus. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, now the ball can get moving forward, which is the good news. I mean, first of all, the good news is that Patrik Laine is out of the program. That can only happen when the doctors associated with the program deem him well enough to be cleared. So that's the first bit of good news. Now, for the Blue Jackets, from their perspective, they can start talking to Patrik. More importantly, other teams can start talking to Patrik, teams that are considering trading for him. And it's pretty clear they want to have a word with him first. He played 18 games last season. They'll want some clarity on what the program was about, where he's at, where his head is at, where his heart is at. And those conversations can start now. I think, honestly, Don Waddell did not want to trade him until other teams had a chance to talk to him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know the player. He's new in Columbus. He doesn't have a relationship with Patrik, and he doesn't want to be that guy that trades players to another team while misrepresenting what that player can be. So it's up to the teams that are interested now to contact the Blue Jackets. They've got permission from the Blue Jackets to speak directly to his agent, Andy Scott. And so all that they've been waiting for this summer, going back before the draft, before free agency, now they can start to proceed with.
Aaron, and we get the sense from the Blue Jackets' perspective, Waddell's perspective, they're looking to make a hockey trade from all indications. Yeah. And in saying that, not necessarily a transaction that's involving a lot of picks and prospects coming back the other way, but an established NHL player. Do you get the same sense?
Yeah, I think that's what Waddell wants to do. I certainly he'd like to trade Laine and his $8.7 million salary. Obviously, some of that's going to come back to him in the form of a player. I think what he's hoping to avoid is retaining some of that salary, really having to bend over to move Laine. And he thinks he can. There are teams that have continued to check in on the Blue Jackets regarding Laine for the weeks now that they've been waiting for him to be cleared. So it's out there. I still think he'd like to help this lineup with a veteran player in return if he can, a player that he thinks can help him. But we'll see. A lot of the time in the offseason when teams make these kind of moves has passed. So yeah, I think it's fair to say it's probably a more limited group than it would have been a month and a half ago. But as long as all it takes is one team, so they'll continue to work to that end.
Yeah, certainly something to keep an eye on, as is the situation revolving around Kent Johnson, right? I mean, this guy has a sky-high potential. 5th overall pick just a few years ago, and yet, as I mentioned, he only spent about half the season with the NHL club, and this was an NHL club that, let's be honest, is not close to making the playoffs. So why did they deem that best for his development to spend time at the AHL level, and do you think that he'll be more at the NHL level now that there's a new coach?
Yeah, well, it was a curious season. I mean, Johnson 2 years ago had 16 goals and 40 points, which is pretty good for a rookie. There was a time not long ago when that would get you a Calder Trophy consideration. And then last year, there's so much just kind of all over the place with this franchise last year. And, this is sort of an individual case that extrapolates to the larger sense of these rebuilds never go in a straight line. It's never a straight upward trajectory. But they have really high hopes for Kent Johnson. They see him as a top 6 winger playmaker. Last year, he got sent to the AHL. They wanted him to work on some specific things. Really, the reason he missed so many games is he injured himself toward the end of February. Last play of a game, a face-off, he suffered a labrum tear in his shoulder. He'll be ready for camp. He is an NHL guy. I'm surprised, frankly, that he went 3 years, because I think this is a player who could quickly price himself out of this contract that he just signed, given his skill level and given the opportunity he may end up with. He could very well be on a line with, say, Jenner and Fantilli this year. He could very well nail down a top 6 spot. Probably top 9 is the safest way to say it, but we'll see. The potential, as you said, is absolutely sky high.
An early transaction on Waddell's docket as he takes over the managerial duties in Columbus. Moving on from Pascal Vincent, do you get the sense how is the hire of Dean Evason going over inside the organization and outside in the market more broadly?
Well, I think the players are really, really excited about this. The veteran players wanted, it's funny because you always assume that players want it the easiest path. And after a few years of struggles here, the veteran players in this room are really clamoring for a veteran coach that frankly could be hard on them and hard on some other guys in the room, especially the young players. They feel they want to be pushed. They want to be driven. They want high demands here. Evason is an intense dude. Just look at those. Every picture you see of him, just look at those eyes. He looks like he could bore a hole right through you. Look at his reputation as a player: 800 games, 1,000 penalty minutes. Challenging, telling Bonus to come across the bench and fight him on the Wild bench. I mean, who does this? As one person said, it's kind of a cross between 2 guys that have coached in Columbus, Gerard Gallant and John Tortorella. Gallant considered very much a player's coach, but the players respect, had a wonderful career. And John Tortorella, who very few players have ever wanted to cross. But Tortorella's been the best coach they've ever had in this franchise's history, so that probably sounds pretty good to you guys.
Yeah, we had Evason on last week, and he had some fun, but he also, you're right, he is an intense guy.
Beware those Western Canadians. They're wired a little differently.
100%.
They're wired
100%.
a little differently.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thanks so much for the insight and your time. We'll let you get back to vacation because the season's coming before we know it.
Always good to be with you guys.
All right, take care. So, Stu, what are your thoughts on all things Columbus right now? Because as I mentioned earlier, this is a team that was very far from making the playoffs last year. They just want to take that next step toward getting back in the playoff conversation. Do you think they've done that with some of their signings and their moves?
Well, we're focusing on what's it look like on paper, right? It really remains to be seen. How does it all transfer? How does it all play out once we get these athletes, these additions, on the same sheet of ice, working under Dean Evason? But net at the end of the day, I really do feel, Jamie, the group has taken a notable step forward. Sean Monahan is a really nice add. He's proven to be a player while in a very senior stage of his career, with Montreal and beyond, can really make an impact, can really kind of help push the needle to some degree. And 2, Marchenko is a guy that shows a great deal of promise. Remember, this is a 24-year-old athlete, but he spent most of his pro career overseas playing for one Russian league or another. But to me, this guy, we have yet to see the full upside of a Marchenko, and I think there's more there. Johnson, too, is another interesting asset. This is a first-round pick from 21 for this group. Had a really solid rookie season last year, perhaps being bitten by the sophomore jinx, kind of splits the year between the AHL and the NHL. But this is a guy, I think, once he kind of figures it out, matures within his own framework, this is a guy that can make a significant contribution as well. So I see incremental improvements here without question, and you're starting to see some Waddell fingerprints on this roster.
Yeah, and I love what Aaron Portzline said about Johnson's deal being very team-friendly and maybe even more team-friendly
kind of a
as time goes on.
Prove me situation.
Yeah,
prove me situation.
We will see. All right, interesting times in Columbus.